Welcome back to Profit, Grow, Exit, the podcast where we talk to operators, founders, and industry leaders who are building businesses worth owning. Today's guest is Sonja Pomerleau, COO and partner at Next Level Now, a strategic finance and accounting firm that works closely with MSPs and technology companies. Sonja's journey into the MSP ecosystem is, like many of our guests, an interesting path. She started her career with a goal to be in journalism, pivoted into software sales during the 2008 recession, and eventually helped that company grow from under 1 million to over 12.5 million in revenue. Today, she helps lead Next Level Now, where she and her partner have some big plans for growth in the MSP channel. In this episode, we are going to talk about operational strategy, the power of verticalization and ideal clients, and marketing tactics that work, including a few old school ones that might be making a comeback. So Sonja, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Abby, for having me.
Of course. For listeners that may not know you or your background yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and how you got here?
Absolutely. We're based in New England, like Encore. We're in the Boston area, just north of the city, and we've been around for 23 years. Not in the current form, of course. Businesses have so many different lives. Brandy has been at the business for 12 years. She's been at Next Level and has really helped transform the company into more of an embedded finance team approach instead of just fractional CFOs. I've been at the company for 2.5 years. And my point of entering the company was to verticalize us into the MSP market. I have a lot of experience, as you said, growing a VAR, traditional software VAR, reselling CRM, ERP, marketing automation, phone systems we dabbled in, even just process automation projects, and did that for over 12 years, helping a sole proprietor grow that business, and helped with everything, starting from marketing girl at 22 years old to doing some accounting and invoicing, to being the general manager and then president running our sales teams and growth operations.
Awesome. And you and I have similar histories where we both wanted to go to school for journalism, thinking we were going to be reporters, and then landed in the technology space in sales and marketing.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
what
we
did
did.
that journey look like for you?
Well, it was one of necessity and struggle, I suppose. Um,
As they all are.
I went to the University of New Hampshire and was in the university newspaper as an editor and the whole deal. I had worked in newspaper even in high school for our local newspaper in Rhode Island, writing, fluffy feel-good pieces and also sitting in on town meetings, which was fascinating,
Mm.
to see what went on there and how important things were. And there was no one else in the room except for me, maybe a few older folks who had the time. So I loved writing. I loved journalism. I loved talking to people. And then the recession happened right when we graduated college. And I had to go look for a different job that paid me money. um, it was horrible working in local newspapers. I just couldn't afford even to live with 3 of my girlfriends in an apartment in Dover, New Hampshire. We couldn't even afford the rent, making $18,000 a year back in 2007. I had to pivot to marketing, which seemed like a natural complement of my journalistic prowess, and really enjoyed that. Worked for a semiconductor startup. Then the recession really dug in 2008 and 9, and I got laid off. We weren't even to product yet. Honestly, it was kind of a torturous 2 years at that company. They were
Oh.
startup, and I was basically doing expense reports for my boss who was going to China all the time. Um, and that was about it. And um, so, yes, pivoted. I had bought a horse, which was a horrible idea at the time. Abby, you know all about that.
I do.
And worked at the barn trying to pay off that board bill. I nannied. I worked in a retail store and lots of other little gig jobs, for what you could find in 2008, which wasn't much. Um, then got kind of found, I guess, noticed by that sole proprietor of the VAR when I was selling cowboy boots to him, $400 Lucchese's, and I think I sold him 7 or 8 pairs. And
You
I knew
must
nothing
really like
about
some
cowboy
cowboy
boots.
boots.
They were really, yeah, I guess. Yeah, he was married at the time, so I wasn't too, he's still married. I wasn't too creeped out, but it was a little weird. It was a little weird for someone from
Yeah.
Massachusetts buying 7 pairs of cowboy boots, but whatever. He asked me, did I actually want to have a professional job, or was I just happy being an employee at a tax shop? And I said, oh God, please help me and get me out of here. I went to college and I don't want to nanny anymore either. So I started working for him again, doing all sorts of odd things from marketing, QuickBooks at the local bank. I set up a little table once. My God. I signed our first partnership with HubSpot and then got into selling over the phone, which was huge then. It was
Yeah.
not normal, right? I remember GoToMeeting.
Oh
Gosh, I
yeah,
think
I
just
forgot
we,
about GoToMeMeetings.
yeah,
You just
all we had
it's
was
like core memory
GoToMeeting.
unlocked.
Yeah, GoToMeeting. I'd send people links. They'd be freaked out about it. Say, hey, get on this meeting. Let's talk. No one had cameras. It was just, it feels like it was 20 years ago, such a different
Yeah.
time.
Now it's like if
That
you don't send a Zoom or a Google Meet, it's like, are you actually going to call me
I don't
on the
trust you if I
phone?
can't see your face. I mean, we hire through, through Teams. I mean, it's just
Mhm.
incredible the amount of change that's happened. And we were installing sales logics back then
Yeah.
on servers. So yeah, I didn't know how close I was to a VAR, or rather an MSP as a VAR, but really there are so many parallel things going on, right? I mean, in the server room back then, but then also the
Mhm.
shift to MRR. So we realized at one point, probably halfway through that job, like, geez, it's great selling software and having that recurring revenue, but now we really need some recurring services to go with it.
Mm.
And yeah, and those were kind of the parallels that we drew to an MSP. It was quite interesting.
So you joined that company early in your career and when it was still under 1 million in revenue. And then when you left, it was over 12 million in revenue. So tell us a little bit about some of the biggest lessons that you learned from that period of growth.
It was all bootstrapped, first of all, so it was slow but steady.
Hmm.
It, my tenure there for 12 years almost exactly matches the revenue growth. It didn't happen that way, right? It didn't happen $1 million a year.
Right.
Um, Sometimes we grew 500,000, sometimes we grew 2 million. I don't think we really had any setbacks as far as revenue reduction year over year, but it was messy.
Mm.
It was chaotic. And it was the point, I think we were hovering around 6 million, where I had several breakdowns. Going to the owner saying, we can't operate like this anymore. I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
It's more, more, more. I mean, I would have to really think back on how many employees we had at that point. But it was not a great model. It was, mostly contractors, and the sales and marketing was really what we were good at. And deploying the services was not our strength, which is
Hmm.
not a great thing. That tends to induce a lot of stress.
Right.
But at that about $5-6 million mark, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to quit. We need something else. And I don't really know what it is, but I think it's some sort of managerial layer. And he promised that he would get some more help, which was eventually a COO. But before she came on board, we deployed EOS.
Hmm.
And that was the shift where we could control some of the fires at that point. So we
Hmm.
deployed EOS internally. We did not hire an implementer. We just went at it on our own. And that ended up keeping me there for another 5-6 years.
And I know you're a big fan of EOS. How did that shape the way that you think about operations today?
That the most simple form of discipline can change the culture, and it
Yeah.
can change progress, and traction happens, right? Which is the name of the book. It depends on the severity of the situation, right? With the VAR, our sole proprietor was very charismatic, great salesperson. People really liked him.
Hmm.
The true visionary.
Yeah.
But also with that energy, that extroverted energy, came squirrels, we called them. And the squirrels would run into his brain all day, and he would spew them out at his most important people on the leadership team, which we didn't have a leadership team at the time. We then formalized it. But the only way to control the squirrels, which were lots of times great ideas, lots of times
They often are.
complete diversions, and we're not focused at all, and we're not going to help us grow. And so EOS, at the simplest form, like I could at least say, that's a great idea. Let's put that on the issues list, which then was
Well,
like,
that's a nice
okay, he
thing too, is it
knew.
gives you that format for your meeting. So as long as you have your checklist, and I think so many of us with our ADD brains too, having that checklist is so important to keep everybody and yourself on task.
And he knew then that his ideas weren't being brushed under the carpet. Like he knew that they were being cataloged somewhere. I think at the simplest form, like it helped control his energy a little more, which let
Mm-hmm.
us be more productive. And then we were actually measuring things. I've learned so many lessons now with our clients. We're constantly, on their EOS L10s, we're seeing some of the benchmarks we bring, some of the KPIs that we're following, and at the VAR, way too many KPIs. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we would look over the data scorecard portion of our meetings would run like 45 minutes because we were going into like 3 Excel sheets of data.
Yeah.
Um, Too much, and then we were losing the forest through the trees. And
Mm-hmm.
anyhow, lots of lessons learned, and just how to have a standing meeting and have the discipline, like you said, like the discipline to follow an agenda was
Mm-hmm.
transformational for us because he would oftentimes take over of me, right? Because I like to talk. So it gave us a good lesson on like, stop, wait your turn,
Mm-hmm.
don't pipe up. Like it was like a
Talking
kindergarten
stick.
for running a business. For running
Right.
a business. Kindergarten for running a business.
Hey, those lessons, they apply all through life. Well,
Oh.
let's fast forward to today. You are now the COO and a partner at Next Level now, and you just recently became a partner earlier this year. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that transition.
Yeah. It's, you spend over a decade in the industry at one company, and my lesson learned from that was I want a bigger stake. Like if I'm going to help grow this thing, I need to know that there's not just a pot at the end of the rainbow, but more drive for me. I know what's in it, and I want to have a big effect on what happens to the business, and I want to say and who comes into the leadership team,
Mm-hmm.
who gets to invest in the company if we're ever going to go that way, because I'm putting all my time and energy into this. I want it to be worth it. So when I partnered with Next Level, even coming on, I came on as the VP of sales, which is absolutely my bailiwick. But then some of the operations things have really diversified, what
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing day to day and building my expertise. So thrilled to be coming on as a partner. I, really doubled down and put my money where my mouth is, really making this thing work with Brandy. So it's a different feeling. It's like when people tell you that having kids, for example, is life changing, but they can't really, and then they say all the bad things. They're like, you get no sleep, you get all your money, they get all your money, they get all
It
your
is kind of,
focus.
I mean, when you put it like that, it is similar.
And you're like, oh yeah, okay, but whatever. And then you become a parent, you're like, oh my God, they were right. All those things, except there's this feeling that makes it worth it,
Yeah.
right? Like having the kids, even though, you're up 3 hours at night sometimes, at 9 o'clock in the morning when you get to see their face, you're like, oh, you're so beautiful. I still really
Even
love
though you're
you.
screaming. I know I was lucky. My
Yeah,
my twins were pretty good sleepers. We had very few sleepless nights.
you're lucky. And
I
so the
know.
business health, I will say, if I'm going to bring like the metaphor back around, the business health is good. I don't have many sleepless nights because we have such a great team,
Team,
and
yeah.
that's all we are, right? We're people with process, of course, put together. But because Brandy and I trust the team so much, we don't have a lot of sleepless nights, which is great. But the feeling there of things are on the line, this better work, that's still there,
Definitely.
and that's a different feeling that I expect. I knew it was going to be different, but it is a different feeling.
When you take like the folks that we talk to through Encore and even through this podcast who it's like the two different ways to get there, right? You start the business alone, isolated by
Mm,
yourself if you start from the ground up, or you buy into something with a monetary investment as well as the time and the energy, and like that's on the line. So it's like the two different paths, and obviously different situations call for different ways to handle it, but it's an
yeah.
interesting take.
Yeah, and I don't think I was ever really interested in starting a technology endeavor from the ground
Hmm.
up because I knew how hard it was at the
Yeah.
bar, right? I knew it was really hard getting to that, 20 clients, 50 clients, 100 clients, and the MRR that follows all of that. The business was around for, like I said, 23 years. Ken Peterson, who is still a CFO, he hasn't exited the company. He's an amazing guy and he built an amazing concept.
Hmm.
And what Brandy and I saw, what she saw first, and then when I was brought into the leadership team, realized that I would be a good person to keep it going with her. We saw an amazing structure and bones and a good reputation locally and nationally. And that is really hard to build overnight, right? So I saw,
Absolutely.
just like you're saying, I saw the advantage in investing in a company that has been around for a long time because I knew we had that jumpstart. We did get an SBA loan. I mean, that wasn't easy. It also happened when the shutdown, whatever, how many shutdowns? It's
Yeah, I
like
was
every
gonna
month.
ask you about the SBA loan and what that
November.
process was like to complete.
It it was not easy. It was not easy. And we help our clients with this all the time, of course.
Hmm.
Our CFOs lead funding and managing debt correctly and getting debt. Brandy led the whole effort because she is a CFO by trade and now our CEO.
Hmm.
I was able to supply a lot of documents when asked, but it was not only showing our historical financials and our pipeline and our projections and our forecasts, which of course, like we had at the ready. What
Hmm.
an amazing advantage, right? Because we're a financial services
Yeah.
company. So that stuff was cake to then tell the story around it. Because there was a time 4 years ago where Next Level switched to a all-in fixed price model.
Hmm.
So now I'm talking very parallel to an MSP. And we lost about $1 million of revenue that year.
Yeah.
And so we needed to explain that, right? That was a strategic move. We meant to lose that revenue. We were okay with that, honestly. We lost a lot of clients that were like nitpicky. And
Well,
I
we
mean, we always
take
talk
like the
about that in
we've
MSPs.
talked about that in the pumpkin plan,
Yes.
method there, pruning your
Yes.
patch so that you
Yep.
can take care of
Yep.
the right clients, right?
And I had never seen through all of my decade of selling to small businesses. I mean, I must have talked to thousands of businesses at this point in my career. Because every day, right, talking to a dozen SMB owners every day for 12 years, it's crazy. Um, I've never really seen many companies who are willing to lose at first for a big bet.
Hmm.
And I was super impressed by that. I was super impressed that they had the longevity in mind to, that vision in mind to say, it's okay. We can lose those $1 million, trim it down. And then we explained it to the bank. Like, Brandy made a PowerPoint that's ridiculous. It's awesome. And explains the story of why we decided to lose $1 million in revenue and how our verticalized plan into the MSP market is somewhat of a blue ocean and
Hmm.
has a ton of opportunities. So we were able to demonstrate the pipeline out of HubSpot and then just explaining the market and what we have to bring to the table. It was not that difficult to get approved. Then we have an evaluator that didn't know our market at all and looked at us
Hmm.
as a SaaS company, which is not at all. I mean, it has some parallels, but not really. So we had to go back and defend ourselves on some of the metrics, saying we're not a software company, guys. We're recurring services. It's
Right.
different. And we used some of the benchmarks from SLI to explain ourselves. And ultimately, yeah, we got a little creative. So we had some owner financing, but most of it was an SBA loan. And our banker, actually, we worked with a local bank, Salem 5 in Massachusetts. They were wonderful. And our banker nominated us for a women-owned SMB SBA award
Nice.
for New Hampshire. So yeah, so we're nominated
That's
for that. We'll find out
awesome.
this week.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. If we won, so we're still New Hampshire based, which is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's still awesome to be nominated.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things that you mentioned last time we talked was that Next Level now has you called it 5 times the operational maturity of your previous company, even though the
Mhm.
previous company had 3 times the revenue. Now, that's a pretty powerful statement, right? So what does operational maturity look like inside a business?
Hmm. Good question, right? I mean, it's everything from see, I had one of our new CFOs yesterday tell me, I got it was my, because I mentioned it was his birthday this week. It was so nice. I couldn't believe I got a gift. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. We do gifts for birthdays here and anniversaries.
Yeah.
That that little tiny thing, it 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 was a lot for him. And I'm like, oh my God, we do that. And it's a process that we have set up to send out employees it's like a snappy gift where they can go choose their gift or their piece of logo
Oh, that's
swag and it
good.
gets mailed to them. But it's like those are the little things that you don't forget the details because we have processes behind these things. So that's a
Right.
tiny HR process that we have in place that makes a big impact.
Well, it
Um,
makes an impact to the culture.
it
That's
does. So culture, exactly. So culture is solid and stable with process, with what people expect and how no one likes uncertainty.
right.
It's probably the worst thing you can do to a human is give them uncertainty. And that's a lot of times what I felt and our employees felt at the VAR was that uncertainty of not knowing how is the owner going to be today? How is the comp plan going to change? How how am I gonna afford health insurance because I can't pay
Mhm.
for it and we didn't provide it at that last company? We have clear expectations of our jobs here. We have playbooks for everything. We even have, a playbook on what is good for an accountant one and what do you need to do to get to accountant two. We have a clear path, and these are all documented in SharePoint. And then we link them to playbooks and Study. So our employees can go there and say, what do I need to do to get my bonus, to get a promotion, right? The expectations are clearly laid out and there are no surprises.
That is
And
really
I think
nice.
that enhances culture, which makes your operational maturity healthier, which can help you grow in a more predictable manner. So, we do that around, of course, deployment and clients, onboarding. We have the whole process documented for how to onboard a client, what the first 30, 90 days looks like, how to get access. Things are templated and people know what to do
Why do you think that so many companies grow revenue faster than operations?
because that's the main goal.
Yeah, that's.
In that,
I
and
think
it was
sometimes it
always
happens by accident too.
true, totally. But the culture at the VAR was revenue, revenue, revenue.
Hmm.
Don't worry, we'll figure it out. We'll
Figure it
figure
out
out how to
later.
deploy that $500,000 Salesforce development job you just sold. That's fine. Right? No, it's not fine. You have to get your ducks in order before you take on a huge project like that and potentially fail. And then, right? But the metric was on revenue. That was it. All he wanted was revenue.
Yeah.
We are willing to hold on revenue to keep the quality because we've seen it time and time again.
I'm
We've seen
not
companies
sure if
fail.
this aligns with you guys or not because I hadn't asked you this question before, but it was a conversation that I had this past week that this kind of topic came up. And it's that a lot of times, especially at Encore, when we're talking to somebody who's starting their first business and somebody
Mm.
who's starting maybe their second, third, fourth, because we're all serial entrepreneurs business, but the you can almost see the light when you're starting a next business, I'll call it, um, where you know that you can have an end game right up front and you can start a business with the idea of what it looks like, what those operations look like, and what the exit is. Whereas if you're starting a first business, oftentimes you do kind of get trapped into that revenue, revenue,
Totally.
revenue.
Totally. And I like to use the kid metaphor again, too, right? You've made all the mistakes on the first kid. You understand what you don't want to do and what you do, or building a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you understand things that you would do differently. And I'm a lot more patient now on adding revenue, where
Mhm.
before I was like, boiler room, let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's
Right.
add
Always
logos.
be
We'll
closing.
figure it out. Yeah, yeah, ABC. All we had a gong, and that's
Oh, no
good
way.
to some extent. It's good if you're a software company selling licenses, it is. It's not good when you're selling big projects that you don't have resources for, or you're
Right.
going to have to stretch yourself in all different directions to get the job done. So, yeah, you learn a lot the first time around.
Now, we talked about how you're a big believer in EOS, right people, right seats principle. For MSP owners that are listening who maybe aren't familiar with EOS or maybe are just implementing it, what does it actually change inside an organization?
The clarity and the predictability, I'll say, right? And my journey at the VAR, it was really eye opening to do the VTO, Vision Traction Organizer, and see, hmm, I'm going to sit back and do we really demonstrate that value? Right?
Hmm.
do we do we really do that? And when you can all agree on a leadership room in a leadership team that yeah, these are the things that we stand for, then I mean, of course, like your leaders then all get on the same page and you're driving for the same towards the same goal. Um, it is gives the operational discipline like we just talked about of not putting fires out all the time.
Hmm.
It helps you stay in your lane with the org chart. Um, so not to deflect items, but to say, is this really in my lane? Let's define it more. Maybe we need a playbook for this. And why
Right.
am I going in to rescue it if it's not in my role? It's helped me like the delegate and elevate is phenomenal. And if I feel like I can't delegate it's something to someone and it's in their lane, then that's the wrong person in the seat, and
Right.
we need to move on and replace that person or move them. And so that was it made it really
That's
easy.
a good point too. Sometimes it's the right person in the wrong seat too. I just want to kind of
Yes.
point that out that, you don't have to go
Yes.
firing everybody, but maybe that
No.
person would be, maybe you have someone against sales who is not a salesperson and they'd be a
Yep.
better service manager or what have you.
Yeah, and it made us analyze that. It made us analyze, yeah, the right butts in the right seats,
Hmm.
and then that forces you, right, like, so how do you define that it's the right person? Well, you need to make a job description, right?
Hmm.
You need to say put a stake in the ground and say, "This is what this role does, and this person is good or bad because of that reason for the seat." And so it just brings it all back around to the basics that we're all in such a rush and everything is such a fire that it helps us lay the foundation of the business.
Now, last time we talked, you mentioned a kind of test that you use, which was asking whether you'd stand up and fight to defend somebody's job. Can you tell that story?
Yes, and it's not my idea. It's Reed Hastings from Netflix. I'm a serial podcast listener, and that's a How I Built This, I think, on Netflix. And they have pretty high turnover. I think it's 10% a year, and they have this very cutthroat test. Is there anyone in the room who's going to fight for you in the leadership room team? Is there anyone who's going to fight for this person? Um, and if the answer is no, then it's a pretty easy
Clear
easy
indicator.
answer, right? A pretty easy answer. That shouldn't it's not I like it as a supplementary practice, but I feel like it could be pretty dangerous too. If your org is so big that you don't understand what the person does, well, if things are documented just right, then maybe it's not fair to say I'm not going to fight for this person. So other things need to be in place. But if the role is clear and the responsibilities are clear and the performance metrics are clear and you can't fight for that person, then they probably shouldn't be in your organization. And that's been really hard for me. Letting go of people is really hard. And luckily, we haven't had to do that at next level. In my tenure, like we've had a really solid team and we're building
That's good.
even better talent. And we do build from, internally and educate. But that is something that I'll be wanting to really stay true to is not keeping
Hmm.
someone on for, just because you feel bad. And most times, right, we've all heard this, like most times the person is actually sometimes relieved
Yeah. Well,
that
and I
they're either
think,
being let go
there
or repositioned.
Dave Kava, who is the co-author of the Pumpkin Plan for MSPs with Sean Walsh, who's our CEO, he had the similar thing but with clients, and he talks about it in the book
Mhm.
that when their company fired a bad client, somebody who was abusive, who the whole team, it just like everybody would cringe when they saw their name on the phone, they would
Mhm.
get a cake that said, bye bye, bye bye bad client, or something like that, and they would all as a team have a cake, and that was part of
Oh
the
my
bye
god.
bye lousy client, that's what it was.
That's good.
And yeah, there's a
That's good.
picture of that on one of our blogs somewhere. But
Yeah.
I just thought that
And
was so
that's
cool. And not to,
super
compare that
important.
with letting go of a team member, obviously. Well, I guess sometimes that is something to celebrate with
Mhm.
the rest of the team, and maybe that's your indicator.
That's a very Office, actually, Michael Scott.
Right?
No, Andy did that, yeah, to fire some people, give him a cake, but that also, I mean, that's a good call too on kind of the Netflix, barometer is the revenue worth it? Is the
Mhm.
team right? And that you could use that on the client side. I hadn't really thought of that, Abby, but it's like, is is there anyone on your team that's gonna be like, "No, no, no, we do good work there. I wanna keep working with them."
Right. Yeah. And
Fire
that
the
was,
client.
yeah, I mean, I know
Fire
like
the
in my
client.
MSP days, there was certainly names that came across the phone that you're like, oh, I'm not going to answer that.
Yep.
Like you just knew how it was going to go. So that it's certainly one way to think about it is like that. Honestly, it's the pit in your stomach feeling. Like that's your
Mhm.
best judge sometimes. But let's
Yep.
talk about moving into the COOC. And I mean, speaking of letting go and, teaching people to execute, building systems for others to execute, what has been the hardest part of stepping into the COO role?
It is broad, right? A COO, I literally bought books on what it means to be a COO, right? Like,
Like, what
it's,
am I doing?
yes, and it's, Brandy was laughing at me. She's like, "You don't need books. You just need to know everything we do." I'm like, "Oh, great." And I
Awesome.
will say too, the caveat that we haven't mentioned is, like you, I'm a sales and marketing person, right? And I'm very Martha. I'm very tidy. I like systems. I like order. So that does lend to kind of that, integrator COO role, but I'm also like a creative, like, I wanna talk to people, and that's good energy. So it has been an adjustment to be like, "No, I need to sit down and look and build these processes." Um, and the rocks that Brandy has helped define with me has helped me define the role, right? So I think my rocks for this quarter are pretty big. They're like really tightening up the client onboarding process, which I was kind of doing anyway as a sales lead. But that then has me touch technology, um, putting the team together, tying it up with the client, providing a brief for the team, making sure that we're hitting the deliverables, right? So it is touching every part of the business. And then the
Mhm.
second rock being, really strategizing and formalizing our technology team, which is 2 people right now, and it's probably gonna double by the end of the year because we're setting up the bones for how do you assess existing client stack? How do you look at the ConnectWise? What parts of ConnectWise are we looking at that we can have an influence on that helps our team and the client with their operational maturity? It's quote to cash, it's this and that. So I'm literally making the process with our head tech team member on how we go in and analyze a stack and how we bring more value to a customer. And again, that's kind of touching every part of the business. Um, and it's still tying back to sales, but man, it's a big open box. And and it EOS helps again define what part is that really my part. Oh, that's really part of corporate finance. I'm going to stay out of that. It's hard to not just want to jump into everything.
Yeah, for sure. And so let's talk about kind of your verticalization a little bit, because that's a more recent development, I believe, for Next Level now to
Yeah.
be essentially solely verticalized in the MSP industry.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So tell us about that move. What made you guys decide to really narrow in that focus?
It was a move that I had the ability to kind of rubber stamp, but it
Mhm.
wasn't my idea. Brandy came into the firm again 12 years ago, having worked with a healthcare focused MSP. And so
Okay.
she brought with her the knowledge and a few clients, right? So it was already for over a decade, we've had MSP clients and have built that talent and keep building the talent in house to help with MSP finances. But it was identified as kind of a no brainer. It's a market that loves to grow,
Mhm.
and that's aligned with our core values, right? So we kind of looked at the core values and the vertical, and then the opportunity, the ocean. And it was quite blue when we really looked at it. So um, the need for financial maturity, because they're small business owners that started it as a tech person, or even if they were a finance minded person, they needed to be focusing on sales. So we knew that there
Mhm.
was a need for sure. There were benchmarks and peer groups already, which
Mhm.
I couldn't believe. Like, I had no idea. And again, I was at a VAR, but I wasn't in the MSP peer group ecosystem. I didn't
Mhm.
know what a peer group was. I was shocked, and it had to be re-explained to me about a dozen times by Ken and Brandy.
Mhm.
Like, let's break this down again. I'm like, really? They're people that own the same types of businesses that are sharing their results and their secrets and their marketing plans? How can that be?
Mhm.
I just couldn't even grasp it because we were in such a competitive, cutthroat market selling Salesforce jobs and stuff, right? Um, and when I learned and then sat in on a few peer groups and our clients, like we have a few clients that buddied up and did their own peer group. And so got to kind of see that and how our CFO, one of our CFOs, dipped in and was sharing the financial benchmarks and everyone was excited. And then a couple others in that peer group were like, you should work with Next Level. And we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Now
This
people
is
are
great.
getting us just through word of mouth in their groups. And then the systems were standard and we can learn 3 or 4 systems inside and out and really crush it. It was a no-brainer. The other thing was we were having a lot of employee attrition. This is only 3 years ago.
Right.
A lot of employee attrition, and when we do exit interviews, it's tough to be a fractional employee, right? Because your brain has to switch from 5 different accounts. Typically, that's like kind of how much 4 to 6 accounts, whatever someone will be on. And that's hard in itself. And it makes a lot of people excited too who want variety. But what is unsustainable is going on 5 different accounts that are in 5 different verticals. So I'm going
Yeah.
to do a catering company now, then I'm going to go to a construction company and then an MSP. And you're like, holy hell, I can't give any value to these
Right.
different verticals because it's just, there's similarities certainly, but there's no similarity in strategy. And we wanted our people to be able to focus on one industry, these 5 core systems, and then they have been just thriving because they can bring more learnings from other clients. Like, duh,
Mhm.
it's common sense, right? It's common sense. We have somewhere to market. Our people are happy because they know, again, the predictability of what they're getting into. They can bring learnings from other customers, and they are secret weapons in the MSP industry now, which, right? I mean, if they went out into the market, they could get scooped up. Anyone in the MSP market is going to love our employees because they know it deep and they know it across 5 clients
Yeah.
in 1 quarter. Like, who else can say they've done that?
Now, how did focusing on just the MSP industry change your marketing?
I just can't even. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited because I'm coming from an industry where we were masters of none. We were selling a product. Correction, reselling a product, which is hard, right?
Yeah.
To anyone. And that's basically what MSPs are doing, right? If you're not verticalized, you're selling the same thing to everyone.
Mhm.
That sounds insane. It sounds non-successful. It sounds like an uphill battle. And that's exactly what was at the VAR. And I would come up with clever campaigns on comparing, which they're still doing, comparing 2 systems, saying this one's better than this one, but in this way. And oh, we don't care what you use. We're just the deployment partner. And that only takes you so far. They're just going to go to the vendor for that. They're just going to go to anyone who has the catchiest marketing. So we're able to deploy content that matters to people that, it's a great book to pick up is They Ask You Answer.
Mhm.
And yeah, read that at the VAR for sure. That was put in front of me at the VAR. And there's only so much you can say about a product, a Microsoft license, right? And security patches for everyone. But when you say you know security for the dental market and you know their systems and what they're dealing with and their ecosystem and their environment, it's a home run. People instantly trust you. You know what you're talking about. You know the conferences to go to. And that's exactly what we've done here. So it's a pleasure. It's I have to do less marketing because the flywheel, as we call it, is spinning. So, our SEO, like we don't pay anything. We don't do SEO formally. We're just blogging about what people want to hear about and what they're
Mhm.
researching. And we're showing up now in AI engines. And because it's a niche vertical, I'm not trying to capture, Salesforce. Like, you're never
Right.
going to beat Microsoft or Salesforce.
Right.
You're never going to do that. But you sure can find a tiny niche and you can own that. So I mean, every book writes about it, but when you do it, it's so gratifying because it does work. It does work.
Now, speaking of AI, you and I had kind of a funny conversation about how everybody's inboxes is flooded with AI generated content right now. And we were talking about how I had read an article that the phone call is making a comeback, cold calling. and
Yep.
and are you guys using those tactics? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Um, we don't have to cold call. I'll say that this is not a cold call. We don't need a cold call, which is a great thing, right?
Mhm.
I'm gonna give myself a little feel good right now. I don't have to cold call anymore, right? Because we have so much inbound activity
Well,
and
that's
people
the
hear
other
about us.
nice thing about niching down too. You get to
Yes,
know your clients or your ideal
yes,
clients.
absolutely. And by being in the peer group network, then we're finding the right personas, right? Because people want to grow. That's one of our core values. Um, However, if someone fills out a contact form, I do call them.
Yeah.
And sometimes people pick up and they're like, "Oh my God, who is this?" And I mean, I do the same
It's
thing
a
when people call
warm
me. I'm like,
call.
"What? Who are you?" Right? And I don't text. I think that's too invasive unless it's a
Yeah.
prospect and we're like getting something done and they need an answer, like happy to text. I think that's still a little too invasive. But calling and then these are old tactics that again a dozen years ago I was this was my training and it was leaving uncomfortable voice messages. One of the funniest things I love to do is like I mess up on voice messages. Um and I love it and embrace it. And then you can follow up, you can stutter, you can misspeak, or like your toddler can come in the room and be like, oh, or you say their wrong name and it's like, it's endearing, it's authentic. And I'll follow
Yeah.
up with a voicemail or an email rather saying, my voicemail was a hot mess. I'm so sorry.
At least you know it's not an AI bot.
It's not AI. Call me back if you want. And like those get great responses. If people don't call you back, then they definitely email you back. And
Yeah.
they're, oh, don't worry about it because it's human. And that is back, Abby. Like you're right. The
We
robots are not going to take over the world. And trying old things is wonderful. I mean, you did something, right? You did a mailer. Like
It
I
was
think that is the
yeah, it
best.
was
It just takes more time.
A LinkedIn campaign, and we had talked about how like 2009 when you would be like the wait stop, and we got over 140 responses to that. If you were one of those people, thanks for responding.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
think all but one got a chuckle out of it. One guy was like, "This is dumb. Why did you send this message?"
But you knew who you were targeting. See,
Well,
that's
that's the
like
thing. It's like you're always gonna have one.
but
It's
you
like
knew.
you have to when you first
Yeah.
get into sales and you are, dialing for dollars, as they once said, it's like it's kind of a rite of passage to get yelled at. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I
And
actually
I'll like
had a
critique when people call me, I'll be like, "Can I give you a couple pointers, buddy?" Like, don't ask me how I am. I'm terrible because you're calling me and you're interrupting my day. No.
right. I had a
To be on the other side of it is so, but if someone says up front, this is a sales call. Hey, listen, can I just have 2 minutes? I'm like, yeah,
absolutely.
pitch me. Let's hear this, buddy.
I had
Um,
someone call me a few weeks ago. One of the days was when I was home with my toddler twins, and we were all having a meltdown. And it was a New Hampshire number, so I answered it, and it was a cold call, and you could tell that he was just reading off a script. It was like, "Hi, how are you?" And I'm like, "Do you not hear
no.
the screaming in the background? And get to the point." But
Yep.
I do think generally I'm someone who doesn't mind answering a cold call or a sales call because I've been in that seat and it does
Totally.
suck
I totally
sometimes.
do. But it's also like if you're
But that's
really bad at
you
it,
got to make it fun, right?
I'm gonna tell you. Yeah, because it's that's how you learn, right?
Mhm.
You learn by experimenting, and I totally get it. But in the emails, like there's just no excuse for some of the emails that are coming
Yeah.
out that are and also like I'll get canned emails even from MSP vendors that are like, you and your MSP. I'm like, dude, I'm not an MSP. We serve MSPs. Like you couldn't even take people
Yes.
call me too, and are like, you couldn't even look at my website and
Right.
deduce that we're not in your target market.
Yeah. And I mean, people do like I've gotten companies caught up in filters before, but generally I always try to at least look at your LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
And I mean, maybe you've switched
Yes.
jobs, maybe there's something, obviously stuff happens. But yeah, if you're in the marketing space and you're not taking 3 minutes to look at someone's website or their LinkedIn page, then yeah, you're not going to get a great response.
But I will say there's culture behind that
Yeah,
because I used to not be able to have the bandwidth to look because, again, we were targeting everyone,
true.
right? So if you narrow down your list and you have a great message and your salespeople are confident that they can crush it,
Hmm.
then they're going to do a tremendous job on those cold calls if they're good.
Yes.
Like, right? Because they'll be secure enough to know that they're going to deliver. And a really good salesperson cares about how they can deliver. And if I don't think that I'm going to be able to execute for this person I've created a relationship with on the phone, I'm not going to want to pick up the phone. And so that's like if your people don't like making cold calls, or they don't like going out of their comfort zone, a lot of that can be attributed to you. They don't think they're going to be successful.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I would say
look at
that.
your market.
And I
Yeah.
think, I mean, yeah, I think you just grow into it too. Like I know
Oh yeah.
now having been in, sales for an MSP and selling to MSPs, yeah, tactics and my ability to just put myself out there has changed tremendously because now I'm like, oh, whatever. If it doesn't hit, it doesn't hit.
Hmm.
You live and you learn, move
Yep.
on.
Yeah.
I think when you're
Yeah.
young and, maybe new to the industry, new to sales, you take things a little bit more personally.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I also like finding, I think we chatted about this, finding really good salespeople
Hmm.
um is incredibly tough for everyone. And it's not something that AI can take over right away. It can take over
Yes.
a lot of the BDR SDR processes, maybe, right? Okay. But we find like I go back to my story of how my old boss found me, was in a retail store and I was friendly and I was outgoing. And
Hmm.
I cared and I retained information and was able to follow up with him. And like the basics of customer service were there.
Yep.
Um, and then, we would go out to lunch and he'd be asking like the waitress, like, what do you do? Right. So, I do that now. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, you are really good. And like, I'll say like in food service and you spent some time, I spent some good
I
time
was
in
a
food service
bartender for, yeah, ever.
and that is where I cut my teeth in sales, I will
Hmm.
say. And you don't ever think of it really as like being in food service
Well,
is
and
in
it's the
sales, but it is.
upsell. And the restaurant that I worked at was a higher end New Hampshire restaurant. And I
Hmm.
remember a few gosh, I can't remember what year, but the liquor store was giving away, if you spent so much money, you got like $100 gift card. And so when we did because in New Hampshire, you have to buy your liquor from the liquor store. So we would do our
Yes.
liquor store pickup, and the owner of the restaurant would say, all right, whoever sells the most specials gets the liquor store gift card. And it was great.
Yes. That's amazing. That is kind of um groundbreaking actually for food service. That's great.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. That place
Yeah.
was phenomenal. I could do a whole episode on how great it was to work there. So,
Oh,
um,
I could do an opposite one on some of the restaurants I worked at.
I'll tell you, every other restaurant, that was the first restaurant I worked in, and it ruined
Yeah.
me for other restaurants because when I went to college in Providence, Rhode Island, and I thought, oh, I'll get
Hmm.
a waitressing job or a bartending job because my experience at this restaurant has been so great. Yeah, no, it's not the same. This is very, very unique place. So.
That's great. That's great.
So let's talk about the future of MSPs, right? We discussed a little bit previously that you think, and I think a lot of us think, that the break fix model or purely technical MSPs are going to struggle in the long term, and we really have to start developing that next level of value. What do you think that looks like for MSPs, in your opinion?
It's bringing consultative value,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's bringing real valuable stuff, that out of the box thinking that you can't find on ChatGPT or Claude,
Right.
right? It's bringing like real human to human services, and strategy, and then advising on a way to grow your business. And it's a really tough market. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's 'cause AI is going to affect every market, so why not be at the lead of trying to understand that? And with all the conferences that we go to, everyone's talking about AI and how to bring in AI. I want to dumb it down even more for MSPs and say, just try to be a subject matter expert where your clients think of you first when they think of AI, on just picking up the phone and talking to you about it. On,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I think I've heard about agents. Can we talk about it? You don't have to be an absolute expert, but I guarantee most MSPs out there know a lot more about AI than their clients do. And I would say
Definitely.
just try to be a trusted advisor, and then see, we have to stay ahead and maybe understand, sure, like, all right, now how do we deploy these agents? But just being thought of as a good consultative partner will
Being thought
change
of
the
as that first,
conversations.
yeah, that first phone call for sure.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, you need to, like, and it can be so small. It can be just in the QBR asking, "How are you guys using AI? Tell me about that."
Definitely.
Just tell
Yeah.
me, right? Collect information, show that you care,
Well,
show
and
that they can ask you.
for so many of these MSPs too, you're working with folks who have a security compliance need, and even approaching them first with how they're using AI, because you never
From a
know
security
what,
standpoint,
yeah, what they're
yes,
putting out there, and
yes.
yeah,
Are your
offering that up
employees on
before they call you.
Yes, are your employees running unpaid subscriptions of ChatGPT and uploading customer data? Do you
Definitely.
know that? Right? There's some very basic stuff that you can have AI tell you, like some of the risks that SMBs can suffer by not having their employees educated on AI. And
Absolutely.
serve that up in your QBR. Do a webinar on it for your customers. Have them know that you're thinking about it. And that's the first little key into being that trusted advisor. And then we're going to see where it goes, guys. No one knows where it's going to go, right? If we're saying the break fix model might go away, I don't know. I mean, I'm finding also just with our generation as an old millennial, like, I hardly ever have to ask for help on my computer. Sure, there's security systems and stuff and the patches and stuff that they all do behind the scenes, our MSP, but I never have to ask a question about how to use a computer, and
Yeah.
like things are going to fix themselves soon. I don't even know how, but
It was always funny. I have a lot of fond memories of answering the phones at the MSP way back. And some of the questions that you got were, well, I remember I told one person, I was like, if I can solve your problem, you've got bigger
not because I
problems.
am not a tech.
You go, no, no, but have you
Yep.
tried turning it off and turning it back on again?
Yes. And like I had an issue in Outlook the other day, and like I guys, I Googled it. Like, I figured it out. So
Right.
I think just the generation coming up, and then, millennials, forget it. Like, now the generations behind us, for God, they grew up
Yeah, they're wild.
since they were tiny on computers. Like, they're gonna need less help. Everything's in the cloud. God, when I started, we had servers. Nothing was in the cloud. I did need help getting the information, finding where stuff was, understanding how things worked with networking. Like, that just doesn't it's not an issue for most people now.
Yeah, I worked in an MSP when the cloud came out, and I remember honestly, those conversations were very similar to the conversations that we're having around AI now, so
Yeah, so
it's
so
funny.
see, MSPs have done it before.
Yep.
If you've been around for a dozen years, you've had this conversation before. And now the process matters even more, because if you're going to try to change the tone and the tenor of your QBRs, you need a process for how those are conducted,
Mhm.
right? So we can't just willy nilly it anymore. We need to have some structure. of what people are going to hit on. You have to stay disciplined and you have to train people. So I think that maturity level needs to be advanced even more to have a chance at winning the race here.
Absolutely. Well, Sonja, one of the things that I really liked about this conversation is that you bring a very operator focused view of growth. And I think it's really easy for MSP owners to focus on revenue numbers. But what you highlighted today is that the systems, the leadership structure, the culture, the operational maturity are what makes a business scalable. So thank you
Absolutely,
so
Abby.
much for joining us. And if you want to let us know where we can learn more about Next Level Now and how to connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, and connecting with me on LinkedIn is always easy. Nextlevelnow.net is where to find us. And again, embedded finance teams for MSPs.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Abby. Bye bye.